The fantasy and potentially NFL MVP is questionable in Week 16. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Wednesday, December 21st, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Thanks to everybody, by the way, for any comments regarding my beloved Butterscotch, my dog who, so here, let me just tell you a story. About 4 weeks ago, we noticed that her leg was severely swollen. And it's a concern in greyhounds because they're particularly prone to osteosarcoma. So we took her right to the vet. Turns out they did some x-rays. There was nothing in the x-ray. So the determination by the vet at that time, by the way, that's why I haven't been doing the show a couple of days, because I have early morning vet appointments, and I have another one next Tuesday. So it turns out that she sprained like her little ankle. Okay. But the problem is she then licked it because it was bothering her, and it opened a wound, and she got a bacterial infection that she has been fighting for like the last 3 weeks. She is completely fine. She is herself. But the wound hasn't fully healed yet because the bacteria was pretty aggressive. So we've been having to constantly go back to the doctor for them. First, they cleaned it out, and then we had to go back to get the sutures removed. And then next Tuesday, we got to go out back to get it rechecked out just to make sure she is fine. She is herself, but it's been a time-consuming thing for us this time of year. So I just want to thank everybody for understanding that. That's been my ordeal here on some of the mornings that I haven't been able to do the show. Anyway, starting at quarterback for the Eagles this week might be Gardner Minshew, because Jalen is hurt. Hurts went down with a right shoulder sprain during the Eagles' win over the Bears in Week 15, and mostly he's lucky. The play he was injured on showed the classic collarbone mechanism that the NFL has tried to ban on hits to the quarterback. Hurts was injured on a running play, so it wouldn't have qualified. Now, here is the deal. He is being diagnosed with an AC sprain that our Dr. Edwin Porras has referenced would, typically sidelines quarterbacks a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3. I asked Edwin straight up, could Jalen Hurts play through this? And the answer was essentially yes, with some risk. But the problem is here for fantasy purposes is there's really no reason for the Eagles to risk this. They need to win just one of their final 3 games in order to clinch the NFC's number 1 seed overall. And given the state of their roster and the fact that Minshew is a more than capable backup, there's a good chance that Gardner Minshew could win one of these 3 games, even if Jalen Hurts doesn't play. Maybe there might be a good chance Gardner Minshew can win all 3 of these games, given the Eagles roster. But here is the good. By the way, here's the good news. Jalen Hurts, after spraining his shoulder, went 6 of 9 for 102 yards and a touchdown. Okay, it was his throwing shoulder. I know there was rumors that there was a broken collarbone. He was not doing that with a broken collarbone. Here's what Nick Sirianni had to say about Jalen Hurts on Tuesday. He is one of the toughest guys I know, and he heals fast. He's a freak. His body is not like yours or mine. Speak for yourself, Nick. He came back fast from his injury last year, and I will not rule him out. Will not put a timetable on him, and we'll see. I think this is a little bit of a gamesmanship move. Dallas is a hated division rival. We know what Micah Parsons said about Jalen Hurts. Putting him out there against Dallas probably would be foolish, especially since Gardner Minshew is a capable backup. Now, from a fantasy perspective, I think Gardner Minshew is a more than viable streaming quarterback this week. We saw what Trevor Lawrence did to the Cowboys secondary last week, and if you can protect against the Cowboys, you can pick this team apart. So I do like Gardner Minshew from a fantasy perspective. Not nearly as much as Hurts, but if you need Gardner Minshew this week, I think he's a pickup and viable start. And I think he'll be pretty popular in DFS, by the way, as well, given the low price and the fact that Dallas is a beatable matchup through the air. It's unfortunate for Hurts, who might fall behind Patrick Mahomes in the MVP race. But for the Eagles, they got pretty good news overall. For your fantasy team, not so much. Jalen Hurts might not play a full game the rest of this regular season as the Eagles look for bigger fish to fry. In our first running back spot today, we can close the book on Jonathan Taylor's 2022 season. The Colts placed Taylor on IR with a high ankle sprain. Obviously, there are only 3 games left, so this will end his campaign. It comes at a brutal time for fantasy, obviously, but even more so because the Colts have glorious run game matchups with the Chargers and the Giants the next 2 weeks. Now, Deion Jackson already had 3 chances to work as the team's lead back with Jonathan Taylor missing time for an ankle injury in the first half of the season, but Zach Moss has been added to the mix since then. The Colts leaned on Moss more than Jackson after Taylor left in week 15. Moss paced Jackson in carries, 24-13, scrimmage yards, 81-56, snaps, 53-25, and routes run, 14-9. However, Jackson scored on a 1-yard touchdown pass, and he was far more effective on his carries, 4.2 yards per carry to 3.4, so it is a tough call between the two. Moss does have the better pedigree as a 2020 third-round pick, and the Colts traded for him in the Nyheim Hines deal, so GM Chris Ballard could direct Coach Jeff Saturday to evaluate him with their season essentially over already. Now, Moss is the priority ad if Taylor misses time as expected. I mean, he is going to miss time, so I don't know why I wrote that. But Jackson should remain a factor, and given his role in the passing game, Jackson could indeed be the better producer if the Colts are playing from behind, as we would anticipate they would. Heck, they both could produce, since the Colts have that glorious 2-week stretch against the Chargers and Giants. But they also did add the pesky Jordan Wilkins from the practice squad, so he'll probably get some scraps in this backfield as well. Obviously, neither Moss nor Jackson is Taylor, but they are both guys who should have been added off the waiver wire if they haven't already. In our second running back spot, Ken Walker didn't practice on Tuesday. Walker was, quote, a little sore after last Thursday's game, which was his return from an ankle injury, per Coach Pete Carroll. It is notable that the Seahawks re-signed veteran Wayne Gallman to the practice squad as well, so we'll have to monitor this situation throughout the week. Remember, they play on Saturday, as do most NFL teams this week. Kenneth Walker didn't burn you if you benched him in week 15 because of the ankle injury and his tough matchup against the 49ers. But he also didn't make you regret playing him if you rolled the dice on him in his return to the lineup. He scored 11.9 fantasy points. Walker wasn't limited at all in the game with a 75% snap share, which could explain why he's a little sore this week. So if he gets in some practice this week and does indeed suit up this weekend, he can be used with some confidence in the upcoming weeks. He's also trending up in the passing game with 3+ receptions in 3 of his last 4 healthy contests, which is pivotal this week with the Seahawks entering week 16 as big road underdogs. And in our first wide receiver spot, we remain in Seattle. Star receiver Tyler Lockett broke his right index finger in week 15. Lockett elected to have surgery to repair the fractured finger, which could cost him at least 1 game, if not more time. Dr. Edwin Porras likened this injury to one that Chris Godwin had in 2020, which cost Godwin only 1 game. Now, DK Metcalf should be fed the rock while Lockett is out of the lineup, but given that the Seahawks are road underdogs to the Chiefs this week, they'll need more than that. Enter Marquise Goodwin if you're really dying at the wide receiver position. Goodwin has seen more than 60% of the snaps twice this season, and he's come away with 11+ fantasy points and a touchdown on both occasions against the Bucs in week 10, 238-1 receiving, and the Panthers in week 14 when he had a huge game with 5 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. Again, the Seahawks will likely skew pass heavy as big road underdogs against the Chiefs, so Goodwin could sneak into wide receiver 3 production. At wide receiver 2, the Cardinals wideouts need a downgrade this week. DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown are both coming off mediocre to poor fantasy days in a loss to the woeful Broncos. Now, they were already playing with a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy, but McCoy left in the second half with a concussion, giving way to Trace McSorley, who, sorry, Trace, was overmatched. McSorley went 7 of 15 for 95 yards and 2 interceptions, and if McCoy can't clear protocol by Christmas Day, McSorley will draw the start for the Cardinals against the Buccaneers. It doesn't exactly roast my chestnuts if I am counting on Hopkins in a playoff matchup. And in our flex spot, Khalil Herbert is back in the mix for the Bears. Herbert was designated to return on Monday and activated Tuesday, so he'll practice this week and presumably play. He was averaging 6.0 yards per carry and 10.3 yards per reception in his first 10 games as the 1B option behind David Montgomery, and he'd have massive potential if Montgomery would miss time in the final weeks of the season. No team runs the ball over expectation at a rate higher than the Bears. Herbert was averaging 11.3 carries per game and 60.3 rushing yards per game in his last 4 games before the injury. Now, he may not step right back into a big role in his first game against the Bills in Week 16, especially in a tough matchup, but he has some upside if Montgomery would happen to miss a game, maybe Week 17. Not many games left, by the way. As for Monty, remember the fantasy playoffs last year when Montgomery scored 57 fantasy points from weeks 15 to 17 behind only Devin Singletary and Rashad Penny at the position? Well, he made a strong first step to replicating that run in week 15, 2022, posting 24.1 fantasy points in a tough matchup against the Eagles. Good for the RB6 performance of the week. Montgomery is an impending free agent, and with the Bears season having been over for weeks, Monty could be looking to put some impressive tape out there before he hits the open market. I'm Joe Dolan. This has been the return of the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. Again, thank you, everybody, for your comments about my beloved Scotchy. She's going to be okay. She's just frustrated right now that she has to wear a mask so she doesn't lick the open wound. Everybody head to fantasypoints.com. Use the super early bird special. It is 30% off. There are no drawbacks to subscribing right now. It is literally the best rate you're going to get all year, and it covers you for the entire 2023 season. Even the promo codes that we'll eventually have next year aren't going to get you this rate off. So indeed, if you haven't subscribed for 2022, it gets you the rest of the 2022 season. If you're a standard subscriber and you want to upgrade to premium, well, just add it on, get the rate. It'll get you premium for the rest of this year and the playoffs, so you get all the DFS content, and you're going to be really glad you did. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all later.